Welcome to EFFector from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. You're listening to an audio companion to our email newsletter, keeping you on the cutting edge of digital rights issues. I'm Christian Romero.
And I'm Hudson Hongo. Later, we'll be talking to Rin Alajaji, legislative activist at EFF, about a troubling new internet censorship law in Wyoming. We'll also let you know about some of the upcoming opportunities to connect with EFF. But first, let's cover this week's top stories with the EFFector News Quiz. The second ever EFFector News Quiz.
This is a recurring segment now. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, this one's nicer because we just, Christian handles like some of what appears on the front page of the EFF.org. So he knows that like much of our recent blog posts have just been various kinds of fun victories in the court and elsewhere.
Love a victorious week. It's very good.
So mostly these are about somewhat nice things. So I hope maybe that'll make it easier. Maybe it's harder. I know that for me, it's really easy to remember everything bad happening. All right. First off, are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. EFF recently received a favorable ruling in our landmark lawsuit against a spyware maker on behalf of a Saudi human rights activist. What is the name of that spyware maker?
Okay, we've been working on this case forever. This is I really hope I don't butcher the name, the Al-Hathloul case?
Lujain Al-Hathloul.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
But the question was the spyware maker, Christian.
Oh, shoot. The spyware maker, I know that's the case. Is it Dark Matter? It's Dark Matter.
Dark Matter Group. Yep, that's correct.
Nice.
So the important sort of takeaway here is that this is a lawsuit by a victim of a foreign government's human rights abuses, which was enabled by U.S.-made spyware and former U.S. intelligence personnel who hacked the victim's device and enabled these human rights abuses. And this lawsuit is the furthest such a lawsuit has gone in U.S. federal court. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty great that we got this outcome. The ruling was, I believe, unsealed earlier this month or last month now, because you're listening in September. All right. Second question. Hopefully my question is clear enough this time. Okay. What kind of AI did the Trump administration say it wanted to prevent the federal government from using in a recent executive order?
So I wonder if I'm going to get this wrong, because this is a segment about victories, and I feel like I'm just thinking about this really silly executive order that's about preventing woke AI, like large language models that have been trained with DEI in mind. But is that the one? Or?
That's the one. That's what I'm asking about. This was, to be clear, this is not a victory, I don't think, for just about anyone. The executive order was had woke AI in the title. I don't believe it actually uses that term within the text of the order, but we blogged about it, pointing out sort of the danger of biased AI in all sorts of important decisions like housing, resume screening. These are things that it's pretty important that AI isn't biased. And this executive order is pretty clearly signaling that that the White House wants to start influencing what kind of responses generative AI systems give, among other things. So we explain in the blog in much more detail the problems with this. Sorry to derail our little victory dance.
I mean, a lot of what we do talks about some pretty not great things, so it totally makes sense. This one, I just couldn't help but roll my eyes when reading it, like, ugh, but okay.
Yeah, I believe I'm a press liaison here at EFF, and at least one outlet reached out afterwards asking, can you have an expert weigh in on what is woke AI? And it's like, well, I don't, it's something the White House made up. I don't know how you define that. All right, finally, what state's Supreme Court most recently ruled against overly broad cell phone search warrants?
Anytime I'm going through our list of blogs to put on the front page, there's always one where I'm like, oh, that's a good one. And this was one of those. This was in Michigan, I believe.
That's right. I think you probably remember this even better than I do, but of course, this was about a warrant to search a cell phone and whether such warrants have to be narrowly tailored to search for like relevant evidence as opposed to just your entire life, which of course lives on your cell phone.
This is a really good ruling. Really cool to see.
Yeah, and I believe it joins at least on the state level, at least two other Supreme Courts that have established this similarly. That like makes sense to me that if police are looking for evidence of a sort of specific offense, that they aren't allowed to like toss your entire life upside down to see everything you've ever done, which is of course what our cell phones these days contain. Cool. Well, I forgot. I guess I should start grading you on these quizzes. I didn't. I think. I think it would be 3 out of 3 if I hadn't written the first question so poorly.
I probably just misheard that one big time, but I did get it in the end, which I'm pretty proud of myself for remembering some of these. We do so much stuff like whenever I go to a conference and I tell people are like, what does EFF do? And it's like, oh boy, there's a lot. And I can give you the short, like 1-minute version, or like we could talk for 10 minutes and I'll just be monologuing.
Speaking of covering a lot, I'm going to transition now. We're going to talk to our colleague Rin about Wyoming's new age verification and censorship law. Welcome, Rin. Thanks for making the time to chat.
Thanks for having me, Hudson.
So first off, can you tell us a little bit about what Wyoming's newly enacted law states?
Yeah, so this new law in Wyoming requires any website that hosts any form of sexual content to implement age verification measures. This specific law is particularly sweeping in that it doesn't only apply to adult websites, so to speak, or sexually explicit websites. It applies to social media platforms, online retailers, streaming platforms, even websites with user-generated content, as long as the website includes material deemed "quote unquote" harmful to minors. So, for example, a site like Reddit, which has a few different and NSFW subreddits, and content could be required to age gate the entire website only because there are certain areas that are sexual in nature. A website like Goodreads even could be liable here because they host information about books that are controversial or have sexual themes. So that's about where we are in Wyoming.
And that makes it similar to a lot of state age verification laws we've heard about, but also substantially different. Can you point out some of those similarity and differences to these other state laws we've seen?
Right, yeah, you're spot on. So folks might be familiar with the Texas age verification law that was recently in the Supreme Court, and both the Wyoming law and other age verification bills require websites to provide age verification measures if they have sexual content. Wyoming's law, however, casts a wider net in that it applies to any website that hosts even a single piece of sexual content, whereas Texas's law and other laws that have passed previously require websites that have over 1/3 of their content being sexual materials deemed harmful to minors. So a site like Pornhub, for example, which has primarily adult content, would clearly fall under the Texas law. But Wyoming's law would apply to sites like Amazon, which might sell adult books or films, a platform like Discord, where users can share, explicit memes in private groups. And that makes it a lot more burdensome for websites who are not primarily focused on adult content to comply.
Now, also, the term sexual material can cover lots of different things, right?
Right, exactly. So that term is quite broad and is not very clearly defined even in the legislation, and it is by nature used so that it's not targeting explicit pornography, but also other content that may be educational or artistic, just because it has a certain element that may be considered sexual or harmful. And this is a part of a larger wave where there is a movement trying to redefine words like obscene and pornographic to go beyond, the literal definition of the word to include other educational topics that folks might be uncomfortable with. And on our blog post, we mentioned the case of the book The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, for example. That book has been banned in several states because it depicts sexual violence. And under Wyoming's law, if a young person had access to a passage from that book on, as I mentioned, Goodreads, it would be enough to trigger the need for age verification on the entire site. So even though that book obviously has immense literary and educational value, so yeah, it's quite a big word.
Now, I wanted to ask you also about the enforcement mechanism that's written into Wyoming's law. It's a so-called bounty law, correct?
Correct, yeah. So it's a bounty law, meaning that any resident with a child can sue a website that they believe violates the law. So there's no central enforcement body or an attorney general trying to find these websites that aren't complying. There's no guidelines on what qualifies as harmful. Essentially, we have Wyoming parents being content cops of the internet.
Now, you stated in your blog post that you expect this law to be challenged. But even if it is eventually blocked, there are immediate threats to free speech from this law, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So even if it's eventually blocked, as we hope it does, its mere existence right now creates a chilling effect. So websites and platforms, even especially smaller ones, may try to over censor content or restrict access to users in Wyoming, just to avoid being sued. So like Pornhub, for instance, has already restricted access to users in Wyoming and 18 other states to avoid litigation. And we saw a similar dynamic recently with Blue Sky temporarily shutting down in Mississippi due to similar laws. So we're seeing how these laws could restrict access to platforms and information and makes the internet less diverse and accessible for folks.
Yeah, I want to emphasize sort of the restriction aspect. So the other option, I suppose, other than preemptively trying to just block access to Wyoming if you think your website or platform has anything that might violate this law, is to implement age gating or age verification. So what are the problems with that kind of restriction?
Yeah, a lot of problems in terms of privacy and in terms of accessibility. Age gates require a collection of a lot of sensitive data from folks. A lot of times they're requiring you to scan your ID, which, as we've seen in data breaches and potential misuse of that data recently, that is a huge risk for folks. And then there's also, the issue of compliance costs. There's a lot of smaller websites that may not have the resources to implement these age verification systems that can be very costly. And then again, the confusion that this causes, like, as I mentioned, Reddit will have to implement an age verification mechanism for the entire site, even though a huge majority of it is not considered harmful to minors and has a lot of important information that people access on the daily.
So I think, as we sort of talked about earlier, sadly, the existence of age verification laws like these are not exactly an outlier. We're seeing them in the States. We're seeing them in Europe. We're seeing them elsewhere. What can people do to defend the open internet?
Yeah, I think a lot about the strong pushback we saw against SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act, years ago, where we saw users rallying and major websites shutting down. And I think that collective action really helped defeat that bill. And I think a similar level of engagement is starting, and we need to continue to push through to resist these new age verification laws. So every person listening here can push back against these laws that expand censorship. We like to say that if you care about internet freedom, this fight is yours, and that is true. If you live in the U.S., you could look into what your state legislature is doing and can contact your local lawmakers to advocate against age verification mandates. I can assure you there is at least one bill in your state if you are in the U.S. And if you are not able to find in your state level, there is federal bills like the Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA, that are trying to do similar things on a federal level. And legislators really need to hear from their constituents to know that we disapprove of what they're doing. And then lastly, you could support EFF, as a lot of us are on the front lines and defending free speech and digital privacy, and hopefully an end to age verification.
All right. Finally, just as a quick reminder of what it is we're out there hoping to protect, can you tell me maybe what the first website or a favorite website you remember visiting early in your internet explorations is?
Oh boy, yes. I was very obsessed with Club Penguin.
Oh,
I
wow.
a lot of my maybe that'll show my age, but I'm quite young. But I did love Club Penguin as a young person and spent way too many hours and mourned its descent in 2017 pretty heavily.
I mean, I know that, yeah, for me and many of us, these sorts of early online communities we find access to are really important, are kind of fundamental to how we eventually figured out who we are as people.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much again, Rin, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Hudson. I appreciate it.
Have a great one. And now, events and opportunities. Christian, can you tell me about some of the upcoming ways to connect with EFF?
Yeah, we've got our big event coming up. If you're in San Francisco, be sure to catch the EFF Awards in person at the San Francisco Design Center on September 10th. If you can't make it, we'll also be live streaming the event on Friday, September 12th at noon Pacific time. This is our big event for the year. We're going to be celebrating some really cool people in the digital rights space, so this will be a good one to watch. Also, EFF is looking for a technology generalist to join our information technology team as a staff support engineer. And legal internship applications are now open until November 1st for the spring 2026 intern class. You can visit the opportunities page at EFF.org to learn more about these positions and how to apply.
Cool. Well, thanks, Christian. I believe that's it for this week's EFFector Audio Companion. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.
Cool. See you later.